with Bold Conversations with B. I am so glad that you are here and joining us today on a Wednesday. First off, I want to shout out my sponsor, which is B. Anderson Collection, where you can buy your luxury liquid matte lipstick. Live your life in color. Honey, I am here for it, which is what I have on today. Okay. Want to give a shout out. You can find any liquid matte lipstick of B. Anderson collection at brandydanderson.com. So make sure you go check it out. Every lipstick is $10. So y'all check it out. Y'all go check it out. All right. So first, and then also I want to let me send a little shout out to a couple of people because they always making sure I'm looking good. Okay. First off, I want to shout out to Akia Hill. She is the proud owner of Hair from Scratch, which is the one who always got me looking good like this today. She is located in DeSoto, Texas, who does custom wigs, also is a hairstylist. So check her out. And it's fall time. So, we're trying to cover up our hair. Ain't nobody got time for that. It's about to get cold, even though we're heading into the second wave of summer here in Texas. Also, I want to thank Gracie Nail Artistry. She's always making sure that my hands are looking good because, I kind of talk with my hands. And so she always making sure the nails are nails in. Okay. So I just wanted to shout her out. But I don't want to belabor this conversation that we're about to have, this real bold conversation, because let me tell y'all, Tracy, my special guest, Tracy Williams, is the realest of the realest. Okay. Let me go ahead and run this rap sheet real quick. And I may stumble across some words because she's real eloquent with these words, honey. Baby. So listen, my special guest, Tracy Reneé Williams, is the founder and principal of TraComm Development Group, is a dynamic leadership trainer and coach with nearly 2 decades of experience. Known for her inquisitive nature and creative brainstorming abilities, Tracy excels in helping executives and aspiring leaders enhance their executive intelligence through effective communication and personalized leadership approaches. Drawing from her extensive background in senior roles across various sectors, including global nonprofits, venture background technology, and county government organization, Tracy brings a wealth of experience and valuable lessons to her work. Come on here. Her passion for intentional and impactful leadership shines through in her facilitation, coaching, and speaking engagements, period. Tracy's coaching style is marked by personalized conversations that uncover individuals' unique leadership potential, infused with transparency, humor, relatability for a transformative and enjoyable experience. As a facilitator, she designs workshops and retreats that leave a lasting impression. Let me make sure. Oh, a lasting impact, ensuring every moment is valuable, inspiring, and speaks action. Tracy captivates audiences with her blend of transparency, humor, and an edgy style. When taking the stage as a speaker, she seamlessly weaves personal anecdotes and real life experience into her talks, creating an effortless and enjoyable learning atmosphere. Things you should know about Tracy. She's an official certified strengths development inventory, which is SDI facilitator and coach, catches flights and facilitates feelings. Global facilitator and coach across 9 countries, claims her seat at the table, community trustee and board member. Woo, honey. Okay, listen, you need to know about Tracy, okay? Baby, I couldn't even run that rap sheet fast enough. But thank you so much, Tracy, for being here. So we just gonna go on ahead and get in, honey, because me and Tracy be talking all the time. What y'all don't know is that me and Tracy be vibing, and I love Tracy so much, and she knows that. So Tracy, I want people to know you beyond the work that you do. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into all the in-depth conversations that we're going to get into.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm so excited about this conversation. And thank you so much for that introduction. I didn't know you were going to read all of that. So So it's a little strange to kind of to hear about yourself, but
Yeah.
I think beyond what you just read, one of the things that I always want people to know that before the work that I do, before the titles that I've had, more so than anything, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm an auntie, I'm a friend, I'm a godmother. I mean, those are the titles that mean the most to me. And even when I know we're going to talk later about kind of your purpose behind doing things, but I never want to forget that, because those are some of the roles that I was born into and the roles that I've taken on over my 40 years on this earth. And that's something that will always be of highest priority to me, is how I show up in those roles and in those spaces with my family and my friends, and even in my community. So I want
Mhm.
people to know that first. And I think that my bosses typically are the best bosses that I have are the kids in my life. So anything that
Yeah.
I do, I look at how I can at some point leave a lasting impact or leave a legacy for them, because they're the next generation. Nothing matters if we're not leaving something behind for the people for the generations that are coming after us. So I always keep them at the forefront of the work that I do, because hopefully they'll want to, blaze their own trails in some way, and hopefully I can have been an example for them, with the work that I'm currently doing. So I don't know what to say beyond that, because I feel like you did just give a rundown of my rap sheet, when it comes to the professional work that I do and then what I do in the community. But I know we're going to get into the details. So
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm ready. I'm ready to talk about whatever you have on your mind around
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
around what
So,
I've been able to do. So
yeah, so y'all, if y'all don't know, being a podcast host, you definitely talk to your guests, but there are things that they will say throughout the conversation that you'd be like, hold on, just hold the phone. Oh, we need to talk. Bring that back. You ain't gonna speed by that like as if you didn't say that. Okay, like no, it's a no for me. So so Tracy, you were talking about the roles that you play
mhm.
before any of this leadership work. So, and just talking, about your rap sheet. So tell us a little bit about your why
Yeah.
behind the work that you do today. And tell the people what you do, honey. Don't come on.
Well, it's so funny because even my closest family and friends, every once in a while, they're like, "What are you working on? What else are you doing?" And I call myself a bit of a chameleon in my professional life, because I have held multiple roles, and some of them on the outside looking in, you might be like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that?" But there's
Mhm.
always been this constant red thread through the work that I do, and that red thread is, how can I help, assist, support, guide people
Mhm.
in the development of their personal leadership style. And I do that in a very specific way. I do that through really mastering communication, how you deliver your messages to people. And those messages could be everything from from a public speaking perspective, to the message that you showcase every day as a leader, how you engage
Mhm.
with people interpersonally through your communication style. It all goes back to master that message and show up in the way that you want to show up in the spaces that you occupy. So that's the red thread. Now, I've done that in a variety of different ways. I have held jobs in nonprofit where I was able to develop programming and curriculum under a federal grant. I have worked in higher education, working with undergraduate and graduate students and mastering their messages as they were preparing to go into the workforce. I've been a facilitator. You mentioned it. I've worked globally
Yeah.
across, and I counted them up. It's actually across 10 countries, depending upon the roles that I've had, but I've been a global facilitator and leadership coach in the oil and gas sector, as well as in global nonprofits. I've been a chief of staff. I have been, a learning strategist for another nonprofit where I was I was guiding other CEOs in developing learning for their peers. So if you look at the work that I've done, it's been varied and it's
Yeah.
been very diverse in terms of the application of the work, but it all goes back to that one red thread of really helping to develop and cultivate leaders by mastering their messages. I think when you think about my why, it can be something that it has a lot of different tentacles to it,
Yeah.
but I always go back to a couple of different things. One, growing up, I was always taught the importance of service and servant leadership. My
Mhm.
parents are great examples of what that looks like. And it's always stuck with me that the more you help people, the more you can gain from this life that you live on earth.
Yeah.
So I am so thankful to them for the example that they set for me. And I would say I would combine that with having had some not so great experiences early on in my career. I was always looking at what's the better way? What's the better way to show up as an employee? What's the better way to show up as a leader? And we can
Mhm.
define leadership in a lot of
Yeah.
different ways.
Yeah.
But how do we show up as our best selves in our work environment? So if you
Yeah.
combine that, how do we show up as our best selves, and combine that with this
Yeah.
idea around servant leadership and the importance of service, that's my
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've been able to showcase that not only in the paid positions that I have, but in my volunteer roles as well, and do my best to show up as my best in those environments, but then also encourage others to do that as well.
Tracy, listen, ma'am, you said so much that I'm like, I don't even know what question I need to ask because, honey, listen. So let's start with,
Okay.
you know, you talked about communication
Yeah.
and girl, your girl going through therapy, and honey, I'm realizing, baby, if you can't talk, you it's a no for me. I
Yeah.
need you. So like when you think about the leadership
Mhm.
and the people that you coached and the executive presence that you want people to have,
Mhm.
how important it is to have this framework and this structure when it comes to communication, especially in the industries and the sectors that you worked in.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Listen, I first, let me preface my answer with this, that I'm constantly having to practice what I preach, because
Woo!
communication is not I say good communication is not easy. It's just
Oh,
not. And there are so many different things that contribute to our, I would say, inability to communicate effectively,
yeah,
but we're all competent enough and we all have the ability within us to communicate in the right way if we take the time to do it. So
yeah,
let me preface my answer with that.
period.
Secondly, I would say that when you think about how misunderstandings occur, when you think about how employees may not feel valued, when you think about how misinterpretations can take place within the workplace, all of that we can link back to the ineffectiveness of a lack of communication. So I, in my work, will say that is the foundation of being able to be effective as a leader, or I would say effective in your leadership.
Yeah,
And I do want to say this about leadership. Sometimes people think that leadership is all because of title or position, and it's not.
oh,
You are a leader in every space you're in. So I look at your ability to communicate effectively as something that everyone needs to be able to do, because you show up as a leader in your space whether you want to or not.
period.
So the frameworks are important, the
Yeah,
willingness. And here's the thing, the frameworks are always going to be there. What I run into a lot is the lack of awareness around how you might be communicating ineffectively.
mhm,
And I'm going to be real, the unwillingness to communicate effectively, because you have this lens of, well, this is just who I am and people are going to have to deal with it, when that's not how anything works when it comes to being effective in your leadership.
yeah,
But we first have to tackle the lack of awareness, and that's what I do with my coaching and my training. let's first make you aware of not
Mhm.
only what your style of communication is, how it differs from others, what frameworks or tools might be missing from
Yeah.
your leadership toolkit that can help you be more effective in the messaging that you provide as a leader. But once you have those, now we also have to tackle your willingness, because
Yeah.
you have to be willing to use the tools. You have to be willing to engage in a different way. And so I have to take a two-pronged approach with the training and coaching. But it's first let's hold up a mirror and let's say what's there at this moment and what's not there at this moment, so that we can try to bridge that gap. And then let's talk about how you're going to execute on that.
So you said so many things. So leadership is not in, and I literally just had this conversation with someone earlier today, because I, in the space that I work in a career center. So I'm constantly talking about some of these things that you're talking about. And I had to challenge someone to say, you want a position, but you're looking at the position and not the skills that are needed for that position.
Mm-hmm.
How about we consider those? And so I'm thinking about the leadership, like when you think about self-awareness, what are some things that we can be doing? Doesn't matter, like you said, it's not the position. You are a leader in everything that you do. Doesn't matter what it is. And I'm gonna say this, like thinking of about black women in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are some things that we can be doing today to start making ourselves aware of how ineffective we are when it comes to communication?
Well, I'm going to push back just a little bit, because
Okay.
here's the thing. Especially when we start talking about how we show up as Black
Yeah.
women
Yeah.
in the workplace, listen, I've had so many
Yeah.
great experiences
Yeah.
with Black women showing up as leaders, regardless of title or position,
Yeah.
because we've had to put in that work,
Yeah.
and we've had to be more aware
Oh,
of who we are, how we show up, and because we've been told too many times that we're showing up in one way when we know that that's not how we are actually presenting ourselves. So I
yeah.
would say that, and I can only speak for my own experiences, that
Yeah.
we're actually keenly aware of how we show up. And sometimes even more so, more than what's necessary or more than what's needed,
Yeah.
because we might have been placed in positions where we say, okay, well, we might have been told we're being too much, or we're being this, or we're being that.
Mhm.
So we actually look at things through a lens of a high degree of self-awareness,
Yeah.
but we're faced with other people who don't. So let
Right.
me so let me just put that out
Right.
there.
Right.
The second thing that I would say is, from if we're going to make that link between
Mhm.
leadership skill set, and then if we drill down further, and what that means for us as
Yeah.
Black women, I want to tackle that separately. So let me
Okay.
just say, generally, when people are looking at what they need to what the skills that they need to build up in
Yeah.
order to be seen as leaders,
Yeah.
there's this concept about influencing without authority. So in influencing without authority doesn't
Mhm.
mean that you're influencing with no power. What that looks like is that you may not have the title or the position, but you have the opportunity.
Yes.
So what can you do to still be of influence within the environment that you currently occupy?
Mhm.
One, it does go back to how you communicate with others. It goes back to being able to fully understand what the other parties needs are, and how you can meet those needs in a way that's mutually beneficial. It means
Yeah.
that you know how to collaborate, you know how to create advocates. It means that you know what it means to be of support
Yeah.
and in your environment, that then creates other opportunities for you as well. So there are a
Mhm.
lot of skill sets from it to be able to influence without title or position that can then raise the profile of you as a leader.
Mhm.
Now, when it comes to, I think as in the example that you gave, if somebody is looking at, skills that they might need for a particular position, I am going to link that back to just
Right.
women in general,
Yeah.
because and women might look at a position and we might have 90% of what
Yeah.
that position
Yeah.
calls for. But because we don't have the 10%, we count ourselves out.
Girl.
We count ourselves out. Men don't do that. So
Girl.
they don't do it. So I actually encourage women
Mhm.
that I talk to. I'm like, go for the position, go
Yeah.
for the role, because you end up having a lot more transferable skills from the previous jobs that you held than
Mhm.
you give yourself credit for.
Yeah.
And if you also engage in the act of continuous learning, then there are things that you can learn on the job, but don't count yourself out because you may not have everything that's listed. Don't
Yeah.
look at opportunities through a lens of a deficit. Look
Yeah.
at
Mm.
opportunities through the lens of what you currently have and
Yeah.
what you can learn on the job. Now, there are some positions that, yeah, you might not have all of the qualifications for.
Yeah.
And then that's when you look at, what are the ways that I can go ahead and continue my development so that I can be ready for this position in the next 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. But I actually think that we have to deal with the opposite side of the equation for us as
Yeah.
women and as Black women. One, we maintain, I'm going to go back to just summarize, we're aware who we are, and we need to show up
Yeah.
in our spaces and show up fully in those spaces.
Yeah.
Two, go for the job, sis. You end up having, a lot of times you end up having the skill sets
Yeah.
that you need, as well as other skills that are going to be beneficial to you as well. And then if you don't, then what's the next step in continuing your development and your learning so that you can be ready?
Yeah. So I want to speak to, you said something early on, and this is so good, Tracy. It is going to bless somebody for sure. But you said something about, I wrote it down, influence without authority.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to talk about that, because your experience, like me and you talking and knowing your background,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the spaces that you gotten into was really you being in volunteer role, what
Yeah.
would be called a role,
Mm-hmm.
where you did not have the title or the position, but you
Yeah.
was still able to step in and step out, honey, and to make changes,
Yeah.
and policies were changed, the way that the view of certain things were changed. So, like, I want you
Mm-hmm.
to talk about that, honey, because it be the
Yeah.
people for me that be thinking they need to be in these roles, and I be like, "Baby, you already influenced the change. Like, what is you saying?" So I want you to talk about that, like talk about your experience and like some of the
Yeah.
things that you would give to somebody who is in that mindset to think
Yeah.
like, girl.
Yeah. So I think if we were to just look at the volunteer roles that I've had, the boards that I've sat on,
Mhm.
et cetera, the first thing, that I would say is that to never discount I would say the importance and how critical it is to build and sustain relationships over time. That's the first thing. Um, I will say this. I have never left. I've never left a professional position or a board position and burned a bridge ever.
Mhm. Mhm.
Even if I knew that it was time for me to go,
Yeah.
I never burned that bridge. I never burned
Yeah.
that bridge. And
Yeah.
I worked very hard at maintaining the relationships that I've built.
Mhm.
Every job that I've left with my supervisor or my senior leader, C-suite leader, saying, if you ever want to come back, you have a place here. And I
Yeah.
don't say that to brag. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that to really underscore the importance of relationships, and again, how you show up and
Mhm.
steward the environment that you're in.
Yeah.
that you're currently in. So I want to put that out there.
Yeah.
Relationship building and the sustainability of those relationships is very important. Those relationships that I maintained are what allowed the doors to open for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once I was in that door, and once I had a seat at that table,
Mhm.
I made the most of it. I think
Yeah.
again, you show up in ways that are of benefit to that are going to be of benefit to the space that you occupy,
Yeah.
but also show up in a way that is meaningful.
Yeah.
And I can't say this enough, that even there are times when I have been in spaces where if I wanted to, I could just talk to hear myself talk. I could
Yeah.
just throw out whatever, words, and they
Yeah.
wouldn't have any impact. But I was very cautious, and I shouldn't say cautious. I was intentional about the conversations that I had. I was intentional about the coalition building and the collaboration that I engaged in. I was
Yeah.
intentional about the people that I reached out to when I may have had a challenge, because I knew that my intentionality would have more meaning and impact than
Yeah.
me showing up in a reckless way.
So
Uh,
what's the difference between the two, Tracy? Like
yeah,
thinking about that, like for someone who doesn't understand that type of language, like when you
yeah,
say intentionality versus, you know, reckless, like what
yeah,
does that mean for for a person, black woman? What does
yeah.
that mean?
So let me give you an example. And if I were to use the last position that I was in,
Yeah.
I took office. This is a volunteer position.
Yeah.
My term started on June 1st, 2020. We
Mhm.
all know everything that was going on June 1st. In that time, we were in a
Yeah.
huge um movement around, equity and social justice,
Yeah.
and the things and it's because of the murder of George Floyd.
Mhm.
Brandy, I'm gonna be real with you. I was going through my
Girl.
own experience with that. I was
Yeah.
going through my own turmoil and trauma around everything that we were experiencing as Black people, as people of color
Yeah.
during that time.
Yeah.
Now, I could have done. I could have, put out message after message after message after message on social media. I could have been what wouldn't have, I could have engaged in an
Mm.
unintentional way around trying to bring people together and bring conversations
Mhm.
about what was happening in that time together. What
Mhm.
I chose to do was I chose to put out one video message. That video message led to two listening sessions that we did with that organization that allowed everyone to come together in a way that was going to be more meaningful and impactful. I
Mhm.
chose to engage in one-on-one conversations when needed with my stakeholders. I
Mm.
chose to bring in a facilitator because I knew I couldn't do that myself
Yeah.
because of how emotional I was. So I made all of these really intentional
Yeah.
decisions around how we were going to manage the
Mhm.
conversations. And
Mhm.
not because I was scared to have the conversation, but
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to have these conversations in a way that was going to bring about some change
Yeah.
to the organization, that was going to bring about some change in perspective
Yeah.
for all of our stakeholders, and allow all of us to have the critical conversations that were needed. Had I just gone off and said whatever I wanted to say, posted whatever I wanted to post,
Mm.
I would have opened the door for there not to have been
Mhm.
as meaningful of conversations than what we were able to have.
Mhm.
So what I look at is I didn't silence myself because of the position that I was in.
Yeah.
I didn't disengage. In fact, I leaned in further
Yeah.
than I probably even intended to, but it was because it was needed. And I knew that I needed to do that in a way that was going to bring about sustainable change and impact versus a flash in the pan moment,
Yeah.
because it could have happened and it could have just lasted for that one moment. But I do believe we were able to really create some sustainable change within
Yeah.
that organization because of how I chose to engage intentionally.
That's, there's a couple of things that I heard from that, Tracy, and that's really good. Is that one, I heard you as a servant leader. It
Mhm.
was about the people and going back to your original why.
Mhm.
Like your parents showed you that it's better to be a servant's leader than people going around saying lead because of the example that you gave.
Mm.
It was the push. It's almost like you took your pain and you decided to channel it very differently instead of
Mhm.
being, to your point, reckless with it.
Yeah, and I think there again, and when I say I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea when I use that term, like, "Don't
Yeah.
be reckless," right? But when I
Yeah.
say that, I mean, let your message stick, like, do whatever it takes
Yeah.
when to so that your message can really stick, so it can resonate with people, so that it causes people to think. When we talk about mastering your message,
Yeah.
sometimes that means really choosing when you're going to deliver that message. Not only
Mhm.
when, but how you're going to do it, and really being intentional about how you deliver that message to certain audiences, because what I don't ever want to
Mm.
do, what I don't ever want to create moments where people say, "Oh, there she goes again." Right? I don't
Mm.
ever want to create moments
Yeah.
where they choose not to listen to what I have to say because
Yeah.
I haven't used some level of intentionality in how I say it, when I say it, and to whom I say it, because that is how you can be of influence. You're of
Yeah.
influence when people are willing,
Yeah.
to listen, when they want you to say more. I've
Yeah.
had people come up to me in meetings and say, "We really want to hear more from you." And my response has been, when I have something to say, I'll say it.
Mm. Mm.
If I don't have anything
Yeah.
meaningful to say,
Yeah.
I'm not going to open my mouth just for the sake of hearing my voice, because
Yeah.
I need you to pay attention when I
Yeah.
actually do open my mouth.
I mean, come on, Tracy. So for the woman, and I'm
Mhm.
literally thinking about myself,
Yeah.
like how unintentional I have been in
Mm.
the language that I use, the speaking up that I use. So how does someone like myself reel that back in, because this is your brand that we're talking about now.
Mhm.
We're now talking about like getting, running into the space of like, how do you want to show up and how do you want people to see how you show up when
Yeah.
they're not if you're not at the table, if you're not in the room, what are people saying about you behind closed doors when your name is being mentioned?
Mhm.
Because you
Mhm.
no longer get to speak for yourself. So thinking like thinking in that mindset, like if someone is starting to recognize through this, like getting convicted, like, oh my gosh, like I haven't been so intentional.
Mm.
How do they start taking those steps to be more intentional in the way that they speak, the way that they show up,
Mhm.
uh, the questions that they ask? Because I've always been known. So, like you making that comment, like, "Oh, here she go." Like I've heard that before, and
Mhm.
it's not to, and it's no, like I'm not going to down Brandy because of that, but I
Yeah.
didn't know where that was coming from, and nobody ever sat down and said, "Hey, Brandy, like, have you considered?"
Mhm.
And thinking through, like, I've been known to ask really good questions. I go to work,
Mhm.
people are like, Brandy, you ask really inquisitive, because I'm always inquisitive about or curious about the thing, the product, the person, and all these things. So, but I also know I can get better at it on
Mhm.
how I ask the question so that I
Mhm.
can get what I need out of that person. So, going back to my original question is just like, how does someone take a step back and
Yeah.
say, how can I start being more intentional in the work that I'm doing?
Yeah. So, couple of things. One, um, I'm not gonna sit here and say that I've never had somebody be like, "Oh, there she goes," because I will bring up what I need to bring up in
Yeah.
a
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
a
yeah.
moment.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
let's not get it twisted, right?
Yeah.
I am known to lose my
Girl, no
cool.
for the
I
earring being
know, I don't know.
loose.
I don't know what's going on. Um, so I so you may not be able to stop somebody from saying there she goes because
Yeah.
part of, and I'll say just for me, part of what
Yeah.
makes me me and part of my brand is to ensure that I bring up what's critical and what's important, even if somebody doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Now, I am intentional in how I do that through a couple of different ways. One is I try to be very observant about how someone communicates, and I do
Mm.
that by listening to the words that they're saying, watching their nonverbal behaviors, because I can actually tell a lot about how someone communicates just by listening to them first and
Yeah.
then adjusting and adapting how I communicate with them to meet their style. So for
Mhm.
example, I am a very expressive communicator.
Girl,
I use a lot of facial expressions. My body language is, and everything shows on my face. So
period.
whether I agree with you, whether I disagree with you,
Yeah.
you're going to see it on my face. Now, there are some people who don't communicate in that way,
Yeah.
where instead of leaning in with their opinions and leaning in with their what they think should happen like I do, they tend to sit back, they ask questions, they're
Yeah.
thoughtful in their approach.
Mhm.
So if I see that in someone, I'm not going to lean all the way in and be like, now let me tell you what we need to do, right? I'm going
Yes.
to adjust how I communicate so that they're more willing to hear what I
Mm.
have to say. That person may want more data
Mm.
and facts and evidence behind what I'm putting in front of them. I'm going to share that information. So that's the first thing. I
Yeah.
call this understanding someone's communication rules. Got to understand what their rules are when it comes to how they communicate so you can match their rules and they're more willing to listen. They're more willing to listen to you. Ex-
You ain't just gonna speed past that. And you can't give me Tracy, you can't just speed past communication rules and don't break this down for us. Girl, we dealing with communication issues. We be looking at people like, how you gonna come? How you? And then what we do, and this, I
yeah.
like, this is not to be funny, like real talk. Like, as a Black woman who feels like that, I have to prove something to you because you're looking at all of this. So
Mhm.
I end up leaning in more
Yeah.
when I'm not being observant or listening, seeing the cues.
Yep.
So how do I take a step back and get
Yeah.
out of homegirl mode and be like, let me go ahead. Let me pay attention
Yeah.
because people do that. You're right.
Yeah.
So how do you catch yourself, or what is it that we could be doing? Like, you, girl, these communication rules. Like, can you don't speed?
Yeah. So, and I say communication rules is basically understanding what your style of communication is and how it differs from other people.
Hmm.
Because the way that our default communication styles are, I mean, that's how we're most comfortable, right?
You're right.
But if somebody's not comfortable with that type of communication, it's okay to just tweak how you talk to them so that they're more willing to listen to you. You're actually getting more done
Wow.
by adjusting how you communicate and meeting their needs. But most of the time, and Brandy, I'm telling you, I still have to work at this because I
Girl.
want to lean in. I want people to hear what I have to say. Yet if I notice that they're not really being responsive to what I'm saying,
Yeah.
sometimes it's not them. And that's what we have to understand. It's us. think about it like this. And there are a lot of different there are a lot of different assessments out there that can tell you your communication style. Um, DISC is one of them. The
Yeah.
SDI, which you talked about in my intro, that's another. There are longer ones like MBTI. I mean, there are a lot of assessments out there
Is there
that
any free assessments that we can take?
there are. I There's one that
Okay.
I can that we can send out
Okay. Yeah.
as a link that can just give you a quick idea of
Yeah.
what your style is.
Yeah. That would be helpful.
Um, and you'd be amazed at like the light bulbs that go off because people are like, oh man, I've been, on 100
Yeah.
with how I communicate through my own style and through my own lens, but I didn't know that people communicated differently from me. So
Hmm.
think about it like this. And I just said this in a workshop last week. People will argue you down about the rules for Uno or the rules for spades, but they will go sit at a table and ask you straight up, like, how do you play? How do you play before they deal a hand? So if we can do that with cards, why are we not doing that and understanding how people communicate? Like that's more important. So
Help the people.
like I will make sure because here's the thing. I'm gonna make sure I know the rules because I don't want to lose.
Ooh, Tracy. 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 Because I don't want to lose.
No. And if we're all honest, we do not want to lose at work. We don't want to
Oh,
lose in
Tracy.
on the boards and committees that we serve on. We don't want
Mm,
to lose in our relationships. We don't want to
yeah.
lose. So why wouldn't we take the time to understand the rules so that not only we can
Mm.
win, but everyone else around us wins as well? Understand the rules first. That's all I'm asking people to do. Please understand. Please understand the rules.
Because you
And
don't want to lose.
no.
Understand the rules because we don't want to lose.
And let me say this, understanding the rules does not mean that you're giving up who you are. A
See,
lot of
that's what I was about
people
to ask you. See, you just took that
no.
all out of my mouth because I was like, okay, Tracy. So, like, okay, girl. Okay, girl. Okay, now listen. Your girl likes to be expressive.
Mhm.
And every now and again, I do expect that from other individuals. And to be truthfully honest, um, I sometimes get frustrated
Mm,
because the person isn't being as expressive as I am. So when I'm running you a rap sheet like, oh, I did all these things to that one.
mhm.
And then they come back and just say, yeah, my day was good.
Yeah,
Like what? Excuse me. But to your point,
yeah,
if I want to win a certain relationship, I have to understand the rule of communication and engagement with this individual
yeah,
if this is important. So if I realize as I'm throwing all this expressiveness and throwing out all this communication and I'm getting certain levels of responses, then I may need to take a step back and be like, okay, we're not having that type of conversation. We having
but here's the thing, Brandy, here's the thing. They're communicating.
Ooh, child, you better say it for
They're
the people
just
ain't
not
the back.
communicating in the way you want them to. Like, and we
I be
can't
so mad. I be
but
like,
we can't force people to do that.
yeah,
Just like you have your default in how
yeah,
you communicate, they have
yeah.
theirs. And I'm not just asking you to adjust. When I coach and I train, I ask everyone to adjust.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that all of a sudden the person who's more of an analytic communicator is going to be like, "Hey girl, what's up?"
Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
they're not going to do that. What that may look like is they're going to give you grace and give you 5 minutes of small talk when they normally wouldn't do that.
And you know what? And you know what, Tracy? I have been learning to appreciate the person that does allow me or at least meet me halfway. They recognize it's crazy because they recognize, okay, this is the way that Brittany
Mhm.
communicates. So I'm going to, it's out of my comfort zone, but I'm going to give her a little bit of that
Mhm.
because because what I feel like happens is that that other person then shows that I care so much about this relationship. And because I recognize that's what you need, Brandy, I'm
Mhm.
willing to meet you somewhere halfway. I ain't gonna go all the way because that's not who I am, but I'm willing enough to meet you somewhere to give you that space of small
Mhm.
talk. Or I'll even try to give you a little bit of that when I typically don't,
Mhm. So
because
my
I want to show you that I do care about this.
so here's my question back to you.
Okay,
What are you giving them?
girl, listen.
Because
I'm
I'm
hanging up
hearing
on you.
so,
How's
and this is a question for anybody who's
yeah,
watching, right?
yeah,
Because again, we tend to be like, oh, I'm so grateful for how they've
yeah,
adjusted to me, and and thank you so much. Sometimes, Brandy, and I'm with you because I'm the same type of communicator.
yeah.
Sometimes we just need to go into a meeting and get down to business because that's what the other person needs. They don't need the small talk. They don't need, they have a desire and a need to just
Mm.
get to work. So
But I have been offended by that, Tracy.
I understand, but here's why offense can happen.
Yeah.
Here's why offense can happen when we don't know other people's rules. We get offended when they're not following our own.
Oh, girl, so offended. So
And
offended.
but you're offended due to lack of awareness, not because someone is choosing to offend you. You're choosing to
Mm.
be offended because you made it, and we make the assumption that,
Yeah.
oh, they're not being nice, or
Yeah.
they're not accommodating me, when honestly it's because we're communicating with different rules. And
Yeah.
your rules aren't better than theirs, and theirs aren't better than yours.
Oh, child, listen, listen, listen. I feel like I'm doing way better. But I mean, but in all seriousness, Tracy, like you that makes so much sense because I have had a relationship where I didn't recognize that it was transactional. And I was offended and hurt by the fact that that relationship, but I didn't know it until I'm knee deep in. I done gave all my all. And in all reality, later on, my feelings were hurt because I was just like, damn, this is this person.
Mhm,
That's who they are in this current state. And now I'm offended. They done moved on.
mhm,
Ain't ain't gave no care in the world about it, but I'm offended because I've given you all the way that I would treat you or communicate with you, and you gave me showing up. Hey, I want to get blah 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 blah. And it's like, dang, can you say hi, how I'm doing? Like, I'm good. I'm good.
and so, and I've been there. I've been where it's like, oh my gosh, what, is there something wrong? Is there something wrong with this engagement, or something wrong
Yeah.
with
Real
this
talk.
interaction? And it's not. They don't mean anything personal by it.
Mm,
It's just some people are more quick and efficient, and they want to get things done. And that's what I'm hearing, is that you were more people oriented, that person was more task oriented. That's all that means. And again, it doesn't make them a bad person. It just means that y'all have different priorities when it
yeah.
comes to how you communicate, what you communicate about. And
Yeah.
that's what I mean by, if we're bringing this back to being intentional
Yeah.
in how we deliver our messages, and being intentional in how we engage with people,
Yeah.
understanding that they just may have different rules than you. But if you know what those differences are, then
Yeah.
we're better able to communicate our own rules, as well as understand other people's, and have more empathy for their rules
Mm.
when we take the time to understand them. And a lot of times, and this goes to just one last thing I want to say about intentionality,
Yeah.
a lot of times we are so dead set on people understanding us that we completely move past seeking to understand them first.
Oh, girl, listen. 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 Oh my gosh, Tracy, like there's so much in that because even in like I am very people oriented. I do feel like that there is an extension of compassion, and I realize that I probably give more of me than allowing to sit back and listen to see what they have to,
Mhm.
like I just mm, mm, mm.
You know, Brandy, it's there's that saying that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right? We need to listen twice as much as we speak.
Woo!
And but that's very hard to do, right?
It's
And
so
it can
hard.
it can be really difficult. At the
Yeah.
same time, a lot of times people are just wanting us to seek understanding from them, and that can mean that you're asking intentional questions.
Okay.
It can mean that you are wanting to get clarity
Yeah.
around something,
Yeah.
but what it means is that you're seeking input, and you're seeking to hear more from them than you're seeking to lean in and just share more everything
Mm.
about you in that given moment. Think that will come out in time, and there's a way to
Mm.
do that, but we've got to seek out what the other person's needs are. That's a part of service and
Yeah.
leadership, is to be able to understand people in a way that allows you to engage with them more
Mm.
intentionally and more meaningfully in the work that you're doing.
Tracy, girl, when I thought I knew all the stuff I knew, baby, I need to go run it back. So when you think about, okay, so you're getting to know someone, you're in this relationship. Um, where is there a balance between
Mhm.
your style of communication of how you provide input versus
Yeah.
I am here to listen and respond in a way that you would receive it. You know what I mean? Like, because, like, to your point, I'm here to serve you.
Mhm.
And I also want to feel like, not that you serve me, but I want to serve you, but also
Mhm.
allow me the space to be able to communicate in a way that I communicate.
Mhm.
Um, like, how do you find that balance?
Yeah, so I do wanna make one clarification when I talk about servant
Yeah.
leadership, because the way that I look at that is that I am here to be of service,
Okay.
not 100% like I am service to one
Yeah.
person, to one. I'm here to be of service to the organization, to the environment, to the community, to the board, and that can take on different that can look
Yeah.
different in each environment that I'm in. So I do wanna
Yeah.
clarify that. Um, that when you're engaging with other people and trying to determine, well, how what's the dance with that? And I
Yeah.
look at communication as a dance,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, that's so good.
Sometimes it just means asking the question, what do you need to hear from me right now? Um, Especially if they're not fully understanding the message that you're
Mhm.
providing. If you have to provide clarity, what other information can I provide? What else do you need to hear? And you can gain a lot from what those answers
Yeah.
are. And they say, well, I just want to see more evidence. I need to see more information and more data to back this
Mhm.
up. That then becomes a data point for me that they're more task oriented, and they might be a little bit more
Okay.
analytical in their thinking. Um, they I ask a lot of questions. I don't ever make an
Mm.
assumption with people because um that can cause a lot of
Yeah.
misunderstanding later. I shared with a group last week that um by asking a question of understanding,
Mhm.
you can really like rid yourself of the misery
Mm.
of the misery of
Yeah.
assumption and the assumption of intent. If you just take the time to ask, you know, what else do you need? How
Mm,
can I, how can I be of support? Because a lot of times people don't know that they aren't being clear either.
mm,
Um, so again, when we talk about being of service, my first question is like, what am I of service to right now? I'm of service
mm,
to this organization. I'm of service to this team. I'm of service to this board, to this committee, etc. And then what's the best way that I can show up to be of service? And sometimes, Brandy, for me, that means that I do push back. It means that I do lean in to more of how I
mhm,
communicate, because I need to drive a point home, but I'm also going to
mhm,
ensure that I have taken into consideration the people around the table and what else they might need
mhm.
to hear. They might need to hear from
Yeah,
me. Again, I don't lose who I
yeah,
am in that
yeah,
situation. I will show up authentically 100% me, yet I also understand that being able to show
yeah,
up 100% as me means that I need to engage and communicate and adjust in some different ways in order to, again, win for the organization, win for the team, win for the board, win for the
mhm,
community. Because if I choose not to, then I'm essentially saying I don't care if I win or lose. This is the only thing that I this is the only way that I'm
mm.
going to engage. And I refuse to do that.
Yeah.
I refuse to do that.
So with that in mind, because this goes back to a question we kind of talked about before we,
Mhm,
before we went live, doing the
mhm,
consulting piece. One of the things, like thinking in the same vein of like I'm a service to the organization, how someone listening may be asking, like, listen, I got myself into an organization that didn't align with my
mhm,
mission or my values,
mm.
but I thought it
Yeah,
was I thought or had the intent that it was going to be good for me. So I took the
yeah,
risk of doing it. How does that feed into what you just said? Like
mhm,
being a service when you're not feeling it, you're like, I'm not here anymore.
yeah. You know, I have been there where I and had every good
Yeah.
intention of, joining certain organizations because they seemingly aligned with my
Yeah.
values. They seemingly aligned with, my why and my
Yeah.
mission and my purpose. I will say that when I was still in those
Yeah.
organizations, I was still of service to the cause, to
Okay.
to
Yeah.
the thing that I knew I was there
Yeah.
for. Now, when the misalignment got to be too
Yeah.
great and my service to the cause or to the mission or to the
Mhm.
purpose or to my
Yeah.
why was being damaged, I chose to leave.
Mm. Mm.
I I will never sit here and tell somebody you just need to get up and go. I'm not going to
Yeah.
do that because everybody their has their
Yeah.
reasons. But I am a huge fan of ensuring that the work that I do is aligned with my values, is aligned with my why, is aligned with my own personal mission and purpose.
Mhm.
If not, then I have to start looking at
Mhm.
how can I create even more alignment in the same environment? Or is there an opportunity for me to seek a different
Yeah.
environment that is aligned with my
Yeah.
values? And I will always give her credit. There's a book called Values First by Laura Eigel. And she's one of my former C-suite leaders. She's an executive coach, and she just does incredible work when
Mhm.
it comes to understanding understanding your
Yeah.
values and aligning the work you
Mhm.
do with your
Mhm.
values. And I will say that she has been someone who's been very supportive
Mhm.
in me pursuing different types of work that align with the values that I have. So I've had leaders who've been supportive of that. I know that that is not the case
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a lot of organizations, but it's truly that is truly an individual call. But sometimes you have to do the internal work before you make the decision. Because what you don't want to
Mhm.
do is be like, something's just not right. The vibe is off, the
Yeah.
energy is off. But you don't know why that's the
Yeah.
case because you haven't done any internal
Mhm.
work on what your why is, what your values are.
Mhm.
And then you're just going to find yourself in another organization and still be in the same
Yeah.
situation because you haven't taken the time to fully understand
Mhm.
why that energy was off or why things weren't working
Yeah.
out. And then when you choose to do that internal work, you have to confront some things about yourself too, of like how are we contributing to
Yeah.
this? So it's not just, again, I will always be an advocate for really looking inward
Mhm.
first and doing that work and then saying, okay, how does this align? How does it misalign? And then how am I contributing either positively and or
Yeah.
negatively to a situation? And what adjustments do I need to
Yeah.
make? Sometimes that does mean you look for an organization that is more aligned
Yeah.
with your why and with your values.
So let me ask you this, Tracy, because we're running into the hour, and I think this
Yeah.
conversation is so rich. It's so good. So if there's somebody who's listening that's like, Tracy, I don't know my why. I don't know what
Mhm.
my mission is. I don't know what my values are. Or they know them and they just haven't identified them to be values and that's the mission and all the things. Like, can you
Mhm.
help someone know how to develop that, to say, here's your mission, here are
Mhm.
thoughts that you may think, and that's a trigger, that's your mission, these things are your values, you already probably know them, you
Mhm.
just haven't put them in the bucket of these are my values. So how do
Yeah.
you help someone collectively pull that together so that as they're going out seeking to serve a cause,
Mhm.
it's easier for them to pick the ones that are more aligned to these things?
Yeah. Well, one, I recommend the book.
Okay.
It's a great it's a great
Values
book, and it's
first.
going to walk you
Mhm.
through values first. It's going to walk you through, really identifying what your
Yeah.
values are, and there are a lot of tools and resources that you can just find through a quick Google search that will just help you identify what those values are. I mean, the way that I did that was actually I went through a cohort program that allowed me to
Mhm.
not only identify the values, but define what those values looks like in my life, because that's going to be
Yeah.
different than what somebody than how somebody else defines them. So even if, I would say, even if you don't use the book, which I recommend, I think it's less than 20 bucks on Amazon, but
Add to cart.
they you you identify the values, but define what that means for
Yeah.
you in this moment. So, I have values around family, faith, growth,
Mhm.
development, equity,
Yeah.
and inclusion. And so I had to really define what that looks like for me and how I wanted those to
Yeah.
manifest in the work that I'm
Mm.
doing. And once you do that, the next piece around that, as Laura talks about, is understanding the boundaries that you're going to set around those values, because that's what starts to help you make decisions,
Mm.
because you define them. Now, what are the boundaries? I'm not going to allow X, Y, and Z
Mhm.
to, to damage how this value manifests itself in my
Yeah.
life, right? I'm not going to, so if I have a value around equity and inclusion and justice, what does that look like? And what am I not
Yeah.
willing to do that would compromise those
Mhm.
values. So if somebody wants to just start that work on their own, I definitely suggest either that book or other books around identifying values, et cetera, that you might find that will just help you do that work personally. I I'm a coach, so I can't like not say
Yeah.
that talk about coaching, right? I have two
Yeah. Yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
And they help you see things that you can't see for yourself. And this work around values, even your belief systems, mindset work, it can be really helpful to engage a
Yeah.
coach in that process if that's something that you choose to do. there are great coaches out there, but if I'm shouting out people, then I am going to shout out Renita Smith, who's an incredible
Yeah.
authenticity coach, and does that work in really intentional ways. She does a lot of work around, identifying your inner critic versus your inner mentor. I mean, it's really incredible. So, maybe have her on the show.
Yes,
It's really
yes.
good.
Go
But
ahead and give her a heads up, and I'm gonna come and pull her on up. I need her contact information, but
um,
that would be good. Yeah, that's good.
yeah. So, I think there are steps that you can take individually and
Yeah.
personally just through reflection, journaling, under thinking back on past experiences that you've had, especially in your professional
Mhm.
environments. What did you like about those
Wow.
experiences, and what really like moved you and
Mhm.
motivated you to continue to do more? And then what were some of the detractors from that experience
Mm.
too? So just making those two lists. What motivated you? What were detractors in those different environments? And start to see what the trends are and what the themes are in those lists. Maybe start with every job that you've
Yeah.
had and ask yourself what was good, what wasn't so great, what motivated me, what
Yeah.
demotivated me, and start to look at the themes and the trends that come from that. You'll start to see what some of your values are too,
Mm.
because something, whatever is a detractor, is because something internally has been
Mm.
compromised. So then that can help you determine what are some of those values that you felt might have been compromised in those different situations, and then how can you ensure that you find environments that will enhance those values and not compromise them.
Yeah. That's so good, Tracy, because when I'm coaching associates at work, I really have them break down, especially when they're thinking about the next move that they want to go into. I'm like, what do you like
Mhm,
today? Oh, like
mhm,
even within your role or outside of work, like what excites you? What experience, and you'll start to, like, to your point, like, I never put values behind it, but you'll start to learn, like, what's most important to you
mhm.
versus not. Like, do you want to get into a job role where almost 90% of the things that you don't like are in that position? Like,
Right.
really? Like, because then you'll be back in the same position or the same mode, or this energy
Yeah.
where you feel like this is not where I'm supposed to be. I want to feel more aligned to the work and be satisfied and
Yes.
enjoy what I'm doing. And so I do have people make a list. I say, what do you like? Like, what excites you? What do you enjoy? What don't you like? I'm gonna use detractors. Like, what's those detractors?
Mhm,
And then I ask them to think about, what's your vision? What's the vision for your
mhm,
life? Because, like, some
mhm.
people don't consider, just because you're in this industry that you're in today doesn't mean it's not a
Mhm.
stepping stone to the North Star, the vision that you have for yourself. And then
Yeah.
what do you aspire to do? Like, that's gonna help
Mhm,
you navigate through certain things, to your
mhm,
point, like certain things that I'm gonna align to, because it doesn't
mhm.
help my vision for what my purpose, what God has for me. It doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense for me to get into that work, because it's not, unless there is a skill you need to gain out of it, that makes a difference. Like, and so I'm talking through associates through these things because they think it's like, oh, I'm just gonna go find the next job. I'm like,
Yeah.
I done been here way too long. We gotta be a little more
Yeah.
intentional about the things that we get into. Because what happens is that you're
Mhm.
unhappy and you're unsatisfied. And then you'll be back in here with
Yeah.
me talking about, I gotta get out of my
Mhm,
road, Miss Brandy, or whatever the case may be.
mhm,
And so that very much speaks to me in some ways, of the
mhm.
things that I give to the associates of the industry that I'm in. And I'm glad I'm aligned to greatness, because you're great. Okay.
Thanks. I'm glad you talked about learning skill sets, because that's the last thing that
Yeah.
I wanted to mention is that, there we have to think about what we're going to benefit from too in the next move that we make. So what do you want to
Yeah.
learn? What's something that will add to your professional value, your the professional capital that you're
Yeah.
building up within your organization? And I specifically want to say that to women, especially women of
Yeah.
color, because I know I talk about being of service a lot, which that is a true North Star for
Yeah.
me. And I learned what later than I wish I had, like to think about, well, what's this next step? What's the return going to be
Yeah.
for me? What am I going to learn that will make me even more
Yeah.
marketable? That will make me even more desirable for the next position. And there is nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that. It's not selfish. It's not, you're not just out for yourself. You're looking at how you can become even greater and be of even greater service in your next position or in the next role that you take on, because you sought continuous
Mhm.
learning in the work that you're pursuing too.
Yeah.
So
No, that's good. That's good, Tracy. There is a lot of things that we didn't even touch on.
I know.
Like, but this was so good. I didn't know that we were going to go in the direction of communication, but it's so important because I have had people say to me, Brittany, I want to be an effective communicator.
Mm,
Or they'll make comments like, you're so expressive with your communication, like you're very open on
mhm.
perspective and thought and asking questions. But I think one thing that I want to ask you before we drop is like, what is one thing that you want people to leave off with? Because our direction of our conversation was
Mm,
around, leadership, communication, being a servant leader, how to work in the spaces where you don't
mhm,
have the role or position, how you have
mhm.
opportunities to still influence. So, what is something you want them to walk away with?
Ooh, I feel like I could answer that in so many different ways. Um, I'll say this, that people might be wondering, well, how do I make this jump? Like, how do I make a leap? And I look at leadership and as like really small incremental small incremental
Yeah.
steps, right? Not something that where you just automatically, make a leap to a title or a
Yeah.
position, but what are you doing on a daily
Mhm.
basis where you show up as an
Yeah.
effective leader? So, um, James Lowry, who was one of the first Black consultant at Boston Consulting
Mhm.
Group, has this saying like, "What are you going to do on Monday morning?" And I love that because it makes you think intentionally about what your next step is
Mhm.
going to be. So I use that and I just say, "What are you going to do tomorrow morning? What are you going to
Mhm.
do, in the next few mornings that will help you make a small incremental step?" Not think about the quote unquote goal of becoming a
Yeah.
leader, the goal of becoming or of a title or a position, but what's one action you can take where you show up more effectively? It may mean that in the next meeting you attend, instead of stating your opinion first, you ask a question. It may mean that the next time, if you're not as expressive of a
Yeah.
communicator, that the next time you engage with someone, you might ask like how their morning's going before you begin talking
Going in.
about the task.
Yeah.
It may mean that if you tend to be a little bit more of a cautious communicator and you feel like you're not speaking up as much, that you take one opportunity in your next one-on-one or your next
Mhm.
meeting to share your opinion about
Mhm.
something, and do that in a way where everyone sees the value in what you're speaking. So it's one action. I'm going to leave that with people. What's the next action you can take that would allow you to just make one tiny adjustment in how you show up, not lose who you are and
Mhm.
authentically, but how you show up with other people to show them that you're wanting to engage in a different way with them, in a way that makes them want to pay attention to you and really hear the meaning in what you are and what you're communicating.
That's awesome, Tracy. You're absolutely amazing. We didn't even get
Yeah.
into half of the work that you have done, okay? So, Tracy, if anybody feels inclined to get in
Yeah.
contact with you or want to work with you, they want to
Mhm.
hire you, how can
Yeah.
someone get in contact with you?
My website, tracyreneewilliams.com. There are multiple buttons that allow you to schedule a chat with
Yeah.
me, just to talk about what your needs might be, for you individually or for your organization. I can be found on all social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, at Tracy Reneé Williams. So connect with me on those sites. I would love to just be able to engage with you, in that way. And yeah, schedule a chat. Go to the website, schedule a chat. I'm more than happy to have that conversation.
Listen, I'm scheduling my chat.
Can't wait, Brandy. Can't
Girl,
wait.
don't be putting me on no 30 minutes. I need like at least 2 hours. No. Tracy, thank you so much. You're such an
You're welcome.
inspiration. I mean,
Thank
everything about you is like phenomenal. I am always so grateful for our friendship. You are such a beautiful soul. Anybody that ever gets to encounter you, they are sure to be blessed through and
thank
through.
you. Right back at you, sis. I need you to know how incredible you are as well. And thank you for the platform that you are providing, for these conversations. I love you.
Thank you so much,
So,
Tracy. Thank y'all so much. Thank y'all for joining us. I love y'all so much. I will see y'all. Actually, we will have a special guest who will be coming on. I will not be we will not have a show next Wednesday because now I'm gonna go into every other Wednesday at 6:30. Y'all know I got 3 kids. I mean, I got two young ones, but that one still she be onesing, okay? But I just will kick back off. I think it's October 11th. That's when we'll pick back up. We're gonna have a chef come on. We're gonna have a young lady who was a photographer and has now made this transition to being transparent. She calls it the Vulnerable Project. And so we're going to talk about vulnerability. I got somebody who is doing her own nonprofit. We're going to talk about insecurities because she's helping young girls, middle school girls. So much more is about to come. So I don't want y'all to miss it. Make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel as well as my Facebook page. Make sure you get on the mailing list. You can get there by going to brandydanderson.com. That allows you to subscribe to my mailing list so you can get updates on the next speaker. Thank y'all so much for joining us today. I will see y'all on the following Wednesday. Y'all have a